We are now recording, so welcome everyone to the ViewPlus Technologies first free webinar on translating Nemeth code and creating a Braille calendar. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Seville, our product tester, and he will begin the webinar today. Here's Mike.
Hello everyone, this is Mike Seville, and we're going to start out with creating a print Braille calendar in Microsoft Word. And so, as you see on your screen, I've got Microsoft Word open here. Switch to it. The first thing I want to do, since I want to get print and Braille on the same page, I need to make sure in Formatter Settings that I've got Interline actually set, so that means that print will be included. So what I'm going to do first is go to the Tiger menu and arrow down to Formatter Settings and hit Enter.
Mike, can you explain a little bit about what all of the different formatter settings can do and why the formatter and settings are important?
Right. The formatter settings are the settings that are going to apply to the Braille once it's translated. So here we can set the language, which is the first option. And so it shows that we've got English Grade 2 contracted Braille set, which is what we want, or, well, what I want. You can change it to uncontracted English Braille, or you can switch the language to Spanish or French or other things. The second option is to interline or overprint with ink. And right now it looks like interline is off and overprint is on. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Braille and ink settings and make sure that what I want is selected here. Okay, overprint is checked, and overprint will actually print ASCII characters over the Braille instead of interlining with the correct ink, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. Okay, interline is what I want so that I get the corresponding original ink text put in with the Braille once it's translated. So I'm going to hit space to select that.
So Mike, the interline original text option, and that is what I'm going to choose if I want to see the inked text on the screen with my Braille in the same document, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and then after that we have the options for the font and the font size for the interlined ink that's going to come out. Set to Arial Black, which is fine with me. The font size is set to 12, but for this project I think we want it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to change it to 18. You can set the position where you want the ink text to appear. You can have it above the Braille, like right on top of the Braille, or below. And I'm going to set it for above so that you can see the Braille and the text clearly when it appears on the screen. Otherwise, the ink and the Braille will be right on top of each other and it'll be hard to see visually on the screen. Okay, so all that's set right, and I'm just going to hit OK. The next option is for the printer and the paper size. Right now it's set on the mprint, which is the machine that I'm actually using, and Tiger Letter is the paper size. That's the name that we give to 8.5 by 11-inch paper, because it's also known as standard letter size paper. So that's what I'm using, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that. And this is actually the paper size that's going to be applied to the translation. So regardless of whatever this original print document in Microsoft Word is set to, this is the size of paper that's going to be used for our Braille document. Okay, and then there are buttons for saving and adding and removing Tiger profiles. And Tiger profiles are basically just a saved set of settings. So all these settings will be saved if we save them as a Tiger profile. But I don't need to do that right now, so I'm just going to skip over them and hit OK. Okay, now I'm going to make sure Microsoft Word is in focus again. and I'm going to go ahead and start creating this calendar. So I want it to be November, so I'm going to go ahead and type in November 1st for the title, skip a line, and then I'm going to draw the table first for the calendar. So I go up to the table menu, and I go down to Insert, and then I hit right arrow to expand the Insert menu, and then I see Table here, and I hit Enter because that's what I want to insert. Okay, the number of columns I want is 7 for the days of the week. And the number of rows will be 6 because November has 5 weeks, and I want an extra row for the days of the week to be labeled. And I don't need to worry about any of these other settings so far. Okay, and I'm just going to hit the OK button. And it puts a blank table into our Word document. And then it puts the cursor in the first row, and that row is where I want the labels for the days of the week to be. And I'm just going to go ahead, since I have letter-sized paper, it's narrow, so probably won't fit the entire word for each day. So I'm just going to go ahead and type the first letter of each day up here to label them. So S, M, T for Tuesday, W, T for Thursday, F for Friday, and S for Sunday. Okay, and then I just need to fill in the days, the numbers for each day. And I know that November starts on Monday, so I just tab to the second column, and I start numbering the days. Oops, I put in two 23s there. 25, okay, 26, 29, 30, okay. Okay, and we've got our print calendar here, and I want to translate it to Braille, so I go back to the Tiger menu, and I just arrow down to Translate Document, and hit Enter. And then Tiger Software Suite does all of its translating. Okay, and it beeped when it was done. So I'm going to make sure that it's still in focus here. Okay. And just so that you see it better, I'm going to go ahead and change the view to Print View, which is under the File menu. Print Preview here. And when I hit Enter, you should see the entire page with the Print Braille calendar there.
Okay, so Mike, just to...
I'm actually going to hand this over to Stephen so you can hear him better.
Okay, so Mike, to review on creating this Braille calendar, it seemed like it was a pretty simple process. All we had to do was obviously first in our blank Word document type in the month that we wanted to make the calendar for. We then needed to insert the table, making sure we have the appropriate number of rows, because it's very easy for us to forget about the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday columns at the top. And then obviously 7 columns.
Right, and you have to know how many weeks are going to be in the month for that amount of rows to put those in.
Okay, cool. So in your, well, I guess actually after then you've inserted all your numbers, then you just simply translate the document and just make sure that you have the inner line ink option selected in your formatter settings so you can see the ink on the screen, correct?
If you want the ink and you've got an embosser that does ink, then yes.
Okay, great. So then maybe just for an application purpose, what would be the best way a teacher might be able to utilize this Braille calendar, or maybe something that you've used in the past? Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, a teacher could use this just for the student, possibly put it up on a cork board and use push pins to keep track of each day. At the end of the day, put a new pin in each square or something like that. So
Maybe even do a little countdown for Christmas. That sounds like that might be fun.
Right, that could be something too.
Okay, great. Well, that seems like a pretty straightforward and simple thing to do. I think a lot of us here in the webinar are really interested in learning about how to translate to Nemeth code with MathType, so I guess that is the next item on the agenda. I'll turn it back over to Mike for that.
That sounds like a plan. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I go back to my Word document with Alt-Tab here. Okay. And I'm going to change my view back to normal. So I'm going to go to the File menu again, just arrow down to the normal view. I believe it's print. No, it's... Oh, I just re-click print preview and it goes back to normal because it's a toggle. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this document by hitting Control F4, and I suppose I'll save it. So I hit Y for yes. And I apologize that my computer is a little bit old, so it takes a little bit to open these dialogues. And I'll go ahead and just save this as November print Braille calendar .doc. Okay. And so now I'm going to just hit Control N to bring up a clean document. And we're going to start our Nemeth example here. The first thing I want to do again is go back to the Tiger menu and make sure that my formatter settings are what I'm going to want for this document. So I'm hitting Alt-G. Since I'm a blind user, that's a fast way to get to the Tiger menu. Arrow down to Formatter Settings and hit Enter. Okay. Now this time I'm going to go ahead and hit the Language Settings button to make sure that we've got all of our fonts and our languages set to the right things. Okay, so the first box here is actually the language box where you can use the arrows or the mouse to change to the different Braille codes for literary Braille. So there's French, a bunch of different types of French, and then there's German, Hebrew. We have about 35 or 36 different languages that are possible for literary text. So I'm going to go ahead and set it back to English by hitting E. Okay. The primary grade type is set on uncontracted. I'll go ahead and use uncontracted text for this one, just so you can see the difference. Okay, translatable font is set to any, and what that means is that any font in my document is going to be translated to grade 1 uncontracted literary Braille. If you want multiple languages in your document, then you would change this font to some other font name, and that would assign that font only to be translated to this language of Braille. But we're not going to do multiple languages, so I'm just going to tab down. The display language is set to English, which is what I want. And the MathType math language is also set to Nemeth, sorry, which is what I'm actually wanting, but we have a few different options here. We can translate to UK math, French math code, plain text, which is a typesetting code that some blind people use, and so that'll come out in computer Braille, actually US computer Braille, and LaTeX, which is another form of that code. I'm going to go ahead and set it back to Nemeth. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure Innerline is still on. It says it is in this label. I'm just going to open the dialog here by hitting Braille and Ink Settings and make sure. Okay, that's checked. Font size is still set to 18, but that's kind of a little bit big for this situation, so I'm going to set it back to maybe 14. Okay, but I mean, if you had a low vision student or something, it would be okay to have a bigger font size with the Braille. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK to close the Formatter Settings window. All right. Okay, so now I'm in my empty Word document, and I'm going to go ahead and start making this worksheet. I'm going to title it, let's see, I'm going to say Tiger Software Suite. I'm going to go to the next line and put Nemeth example. And then on the next line, I'm going to want the date, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the Insert menu, and arrow down to Date and hit Enter. Date and time, Enter. Okay. And it has all these different formats of the date that you can choose from. I'm just going to choose the first one, so I'll hit Enter, and it puts the date in. Okay, and so all of this stuff now is going to be translated to literary, uncontracted English Braille. Okay, so now I'm going to want to start putting in my math objects. And the way that I start, I'm going to want all of these problems numbered. And so what I do is I insert a MathType object from the MathType menu, and if you want the numbers of the problems to come out also in Nemeth code, they have to be included in the MathType object. Okay, so the way to do that is to go to the MathType menu first. Okay, so MathType, and then you want to choose Insert Inline Equation. And when you press Enter, it will actually bring MathType up with all of its buttons. It's giving me a warning here, but I don't care about that, so I'm hitting OK. And so it brings up all MathType's buttons and visual controls and things. And so I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to put in is a simple addition problem. And this is the first one, so I'm going to just number it with 1, period. And after that number, I want a space to be put in. And in order to force a space in MathType, you have to hit Control Space. So Control Space here. And then I can type my problem. And I'm just going to do 2 plus 4 equals 6. And something that simple I can just type in. Okay? And so MathType actually puts that in with the correct spacing for the equal sign and the plus sign in ink. And then when TSS translates it, it's going to insert the correct spacing for Braille. So in order to go back to your Word document, you can either hit Control F4, or you can go to the File menu and choose Close and Return to Document, which I have already arrowed to, and I'm going to hit Enter. And it's asking me if I want to save this object as a graphic, and I do, so I hit Yes. And it brings me back to my Word document, and you should see the MathType there. Does it look right, Stephen?
Yes, it does.
All right. And so each problem has to be entered, or well, each line of mathematics code has to be entered as a separate MathType object. Otherwise, MathType will see several lines, and it will think that it wants to translate a matrix. Okay, so the second example here I have is actually an example of reducing fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the MathType menu and insert an inline equation. And I'm going to have my buddy Stephen here use the visual controls to insert the fractions for me, since I'm not a visual user.
So number 2, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike is going to be telling me the equations. I'm going to use the visual tools here to insert those. So we're on problem number 2, so I'm going to go ahead and hit number 2 on the keyboard and then period. And then, as Mike mentioned earlier, MathType does not allow you to actually insert a space into a math equation. So in order to force that space, I have to hit the Control key plus the space bar. Okay, so now what's the fraction, Mike?
And so we're going to do 8/12 equals 2/3.
Okay, so I'm going to enter 8/12 equals 2/3. So in MathType, you'll notice here all of the different visual icons. The one for the fraction is actually the second one here from the left and second one down. So I'm going to click on this button, and I'll just go ahead and use this first fraction tool here. I'll select that. And you'll notice two little empty boxes where I'm actually able to type in the numbers for my fraction. So I'll hit the number 8 and then the tab key to go to the next box. And now I can type in 12 for my 8/12. I can then hit tab once more to get out of the fraction. The next step is to have that equal 2/3. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the equal sign on my keyboard. And then for the next fraction, simply go back up to the fraction button again. Select the fraction I would like. Type in 2, tab to the next box, and 3 for 2/3. I can then tab if I wanted to continue on with this, or just simply to get out of the fraction. So then to update this back into my document, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control F4. That's the shortcut key for closing and updating the document. Again, it'll ask if I'd like to save it. I'll hit yes. And we now have our problem number 2, 8/12 equals 2/3.
All right, so at this point I want to bring up the issue of accessibility with these MathType objects. And because the MathType buttons are not accessible, a blind user can actually use LaTeX code, which is spelled LATEX, but it's pronounced LaTeX, to enter in the same information in Microsoft Word. And the way that you do this is the MathType object, or well anyway, the LaTeX code will be surrounded with $signs. So I'm going to do a $sign to open it, and then I'm going to type in the LaTeX commands for the fractions that I want. And I'm not going to go over all of the basic LaTeX commands, but it's easy to find a list of them on the internet. So for fraction, it's \frac, and then the numerator and denominator are surrounded by brackets. So open bracket, 8, close bracket, open bracket, 12, close bracket, equals, and then \frac for a new fraction, and then 2, close bracket, open bracket, 3, close bracket, and then a closing $sign. And the way to get the MathType object out of this is to hit Alt with the \, key. So Alt \, and it's crunching, and then you should see the same exact fraction, or fractions that Steve typed in earlier. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and delete that because we're just doing that for a demonstration. And we'll go ahead and enter in the third problem.
All right, and just to clarify on what Mike was talking about, the LaTeX example that he just showed, I'm guessing that most of you are sighted that are in the webinar today, so you probably will not need to ever insert math equations that way, but it's at least good to be familiar with that method should your student need to do so. But I'm assuming most of you are teachers, and so you can simply use those visual icons to insert the math equations. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do another one, Mike?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to go back to my MathType window. I'm guessing this is going to be number 3, so I'll insert an inline equation. So again, to number it, I'm going to type 3, period, control, space to force that space. Okay, and what's my math problem?
This time we're actually going to insert a blank. So we're going to do 6 times.
So for the times, I can use my times option, which is under here under the 4th from the left and on the top. I have my simple times symbol. Okay.
Okay. And then in order to get the blank, we'll want a full cell, which is the Nemeth code representation of a blank. And so what we do is we put in 2 underlined characters.
Okay, so to get the blank, we'll do 2 underlined characters. So the same as the underscore, correct, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 of the underscores. Got it.
So 6 times blank equals 36.
All right. Equals 36.
Okay. And then go ahead and insert that into the...
Okay, so again, Control F4 is that shortcut to do so. It'll ask us to save, and we can say yes, and we have it.
So now let's show them something about superscripts.
All right, superscripts. So that'll be number 4. So we'll go back to our MathType window, insert inline equation, type in number 4, and my control space to force that space.
Okay. And so this time we're going to do an algebra problem with factoring. So first I'm going to read the factors, and Stephen's going to enter them in MathType.
All right, let's hear them.
Okay, so first is open paren.
Open parentheses. Okay.
X plus 5.
Now, is that a capital X or lowercase x, Mike?
It's lowercase.
Lowercase. X
Variables are always lowercase.
plus 5.
Close paren.
All right.
And open paren. X minus 3. Close paren. Equals x squared.
Okay, so far I've got in parentheses 2 different factors here, x plus 5 and x minus 3. So now we're going to show what this equals. Now to insert an exponent, I'll need to go ahead and use my tools here in MathType. Once again, all of this other stuff I was just typing in with the keyboard. But for the exponents, I can use this tool here, this one next to where my fractions were at, and select where I want that exponent to be. Now it's probably fairly small on your screen. However, the upper left-hand option here is for the upper right-hand corner exponent. You'll notice that when I click on that box, a little box here is appearing, and that'll allow me to type in 2 for x squared. Then to move on with my equation, I can just hit the tab key to get out of that box. Okay?
So x squared plus 2x.
Plus 2x, I use just typing in the keyboard.
Minus 15.
Minus 15.
And that's the end of that one.
So that's the end of that one. So I'll go ahead and hit Control F4 to update that. Hit yes. And we have it in.
Okie dokie. So let's move on to square roots.
All right, so square root. So I'll go ahead and go back to MathType again. Insert inline equation. Number 5. Force that space again by hitting Control space, since MathType will not allow spaces in any equations unless it's forced.
Okay, and this time we're going to do the square root of 144 equals 12.
All right, so the square root of 144 equals 12. So the same button is where my fractions were. I have my square root symbol. Right down here, I'll select the square root. So the square root of 144. Now you'll notice as I typed in those numbers, the line indicating the length of the square root continually is expanding or extending. So I can continue typing an equation in this. Now to get out of that, I'll go ahead and hit the tab key. And now I can say equals 12.
All right.
So then I'll go ahead and update my document. And I've got it in the document here.
Okay. I just want to show them again the accessible way
Sure.
to do that. Okay, so I'm going to show you the accessible way to enter a square root with the LaTeX code. So again, I'm going to open LaTeX with a $sign. I'm going to type the problem number in to this one, so 5 period. And in LaTeX, a space is actually backslash space. And then square root is backslash SQRT. And then again, the value is in brackets. So open bracket, 144, close bracket, and then equals, and 12, and a closed $sign. And then I do Alt backslash to translate that into a MathType object. And does that look just the same?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and delete that demonstration. Okay, now the next thing we're going to show you is actually a diagram. So I'm going to give the microphone back to Stephen here for a minute.
All right, so Mike's trusting me with my art abilities here in Microsoft Word. Let's see how I do.
So first let's put in the label. So go back to MathType.
Okay, so we're going to type in a label here. So MathType, insert inline equation.
And we're going to do angle A equals 45 degrees.
Okay, so angle A equals 45 degrees.
And this will be number 6, by the way.
Number 6, thank you. So we'll type in 6, period, Control space to force that space again. And the angles are actually hiding out under our geometry tab, you'll notice we have different tabs. We've currently been on algebra, but all the way over here to the right we have a geometry option. And then the very last buttons we have here are all in regards to our angles. So I can say angle by selecting the button there for the angle, then capital A because angles are always labeled by capitals. The equal sign just by typing on my keyboard. I can type in 45. And then for the degrees, visually we always see the degree sign as an exponent. However, in MathType, to have that come in correctly and translate correctly to Nemeth, we'll simply select the circle, the open circle here, again next to where we had our multiplication and division signs, and that'll insert that circle directly in for us. Now we can hit Control F4 as our shortcut to update our document. Save changes to equation document 2, yes. And now you can see we have angle A equals 45 degrees.
All right, so now we need to go ahead and draw the angle.
Time to draw the angle. Here we go. So in Microsoft Word, we actually have the ability to draw many different kinds of shapes. You'll notice that at the bottom of our Word document here, we have our drawing toolbar. Now, if you're ever wanting to do any kind of drawing and you do not have that drawing toolbar, to access that drawing toolbar, you can go up into the menu, somewhere in the blank area of the menu in Microsoft Word, give it a right-click command, and then you can actually see all of the different toolbars you have to choose from. As you can see, the drawing toolbar is checked, showing that it's active. But if it wasn't active, that's where we would select to make that active, and then that would be displayed on our screen. Now that I have the drawing toolbar here, I can use my arrows here to draw this angle. So I'm going to select the arrow key. And Mike, I'm going to have to go ahead and turn your JAWS off for that. Thank you.
Just thinking.
Yep. We're just going to go ahead and wait for a second because we're turning our JAWS off. One moment, folks. Okay, so now we have our JAWS turned off. Sorry about that, folks. Now I can go ahead and begin drawing. The reason I had to turn JAWS off is JAWS actually was interfering with that drawing canvas that was coming up when I was trying to draw the angles. So I'm going to go ahead and...
But we don't want a canvas section.
But yeah, we don't want that canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my drawing here. When I see that drawing canvas appear, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the delete key on my keyboard, and that'll remove that canvas so you don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just draw in what I envision is approximately a 45-degree angle. That looks pretty good. I'll then go ahead and select my arrow once again to complete the angle. And what's really cool about drawing in these graphics is when we print this out to our Tiger Embosser, we'll actually be able to tactily feel this angle. Okay, so now that I have my angle drawn in, maybe I'll just expand that a little bit. Since this angle is actually one image, it'll be important that we actually group these two lines together. So to group these images, what I have to do is actually select both pieces of the line at once. So I'll go ahead and hit, move my cursor over that first piece of the line. You'll notice I get the crosshairs. I'll then left click with my mouse, then move over the second piece of the line. While holding the control key, I can then left click once more. You'll notice that all pieces of this are now selected. Again, with my cursor over one of the pieces of the line and I have the crosshairs, I can right click, select grouping, and group. Now, we are showing you this in Microsoft Office 2003. All the functionality is the same in 2007, just some of the places for grouping might be located in a different location. So now that I have this grouped as one image, I can easily move that around my document where I would like it to be. And then the whole purpose of drawing this in is to label that angle A as 45 degrees. So since it's already listed that angle A is 45 degrees, all I need to do is just type in an A down here. So to do that, I'm going to go to my Insert toolbar, because what I'm going to do is actually bring in a text box. So Insert Text Box. Again, you'll see I have that drawing canvas. So I'm just going to hit Delete. Draw a text box where I'd like angle A to be labeled. I'll then go ahead and type A on my keyboard. Yeah, so since right now I have a size 12 for my font, I want to have this be the approximate Braille size. So what I'm going to do is actually select this label and go up here and change that to size 30, since we know our Braille is size 29. So I'll just go ahead and type in 30 there. And you can see my label for A is now size 30. And the reason I did that is to see if my Braille is going to get cut off. You'll notice that the A is cut off currently. So now what I can do is actually expand that text box so it will fit appropriately with the Braille. One thing you'll notice too with my text box is that I have that dark border surrounding the A. That's the border of the text box. It's important to turn that off unless you want that to be tactily distinguishable to your student. To turn that off, we'll select the text box. Then while the cursor is over the border of that text box, I'll give it a right-click command, format the text box. And then I'm just going to turn off the fill color. It's currently set to white, but I'm just going to select no fill. And I'm also going to turn the line color to be no line. And when I hit OK, you'll notice that we have that completely removed. So we have now inserted a text box and a graphic of our angle of it's 45 degrees. And I will turn you back over to Mike.
Okay, so now we've got our Nemeth example worksheet made up. I'm going to go ahead now and translate it to Braille. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to restart JAWS, but I'm going to save this first to make sure, just in case. So save, I'm going to hit, what is it asking me?
I was asking, it's because it was recovered. So save.
Okay. No, JAWS is off. Is it ready to save?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to type in a file name for this and save it. Let's see. Nemeth example, and I'll put the date. .doc. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to restart JAWS, just for my own use here. I may need to actually go to the desktop and select it. Okay, now I'm running. And okay. We've got our document saved, and in order to translate it, I'm going to go to the tiger menu and just arrow down to translate document. And hit enter, and it does its job. Alright, and then you should see all of our text is translated with the Braille. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the print preview so that you can see the entire page. So just go to File and Print Preview and hit enter. And there you should have the entire worksheet. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to normal view. So File and then Print Preview again to go back to normal view. And then I'm just going to go and show you that it's possible to reload the original document since we've saved it. So say, one of these problems or something, there's something we actually meant to do differently. We can go to the tiger menu and arrow down to the Reload Original Document option. And I hit enter on that. And there's our original, so we can actually make a change if we want to, and then translate it again. And that is all for our Nemeth example. And here is Stephen.
All right, thanks, Mike. So basically, again, to create a Nemeth document, all we have to do is go up to our MathType toolbar, insert that inline equation, type in the desired equation that we would like. Then we'll update the document by saving and closing that MathType window. And then once that Nemeth equation is in our Word document, we can add any kind of text or graphics and then simply go to our tiger menu and translate the document. And then we'll have our ink and Braille in the same document and it'll be ready to print out. So that is all of the stuff that we wanted to show you guys today on translating Nemeth code and creating the Braille calendar. So in the last 10-15 minutes that we have here, we're going to go ahead and start going through the questions that a number of you have entered while we were going through the webinar. If you feel like you have understood most of this, you are feel free to go ahead and leave now. Otherwise, the rest of you, feel free to stick around and we'll go through some of these questions. So one second here. Gotta expand my question window. All right. I had a question here about our audio that was fading in and out. I apologize for that. Hopefully the recording that we have will have fixed that issue, so feel free to, when we send you that recording, we'll send that to you. Okay, so Greg, you asked, would update document have worked there as well? If you're in regards to the, I'm assuming you're talking about the MathType window, file and update document in the MathType window would work as well. The closing and saving of the window, let me pull up that window for you here really quick. Under the MathType window, close and return to Nemeth example, as well as update Nemeth example, will both save the document for you. So yes, that is correct.
I have a comment about that, though.
Yeah, Mike would like to make a comment about that.
The reason that we choose return to document is so that we get a clean MathType object each time. If you simply update the document every time, it actually tacks on more information to that MathType object. And if there are more than one line, like more than one problem, it will think it's a matrix and translation will be wrong. So we really recommend close and return to document.
All right, thank you for that insight, Mike. So moving on to the next question we have here. Earlier, we had a person that asked bracket or brace. I'm assuming that you're referring to when we were doing the law tech. It is the brackets, correct, Mike?
It's actually a brace.
Oh, it is a brace. Okay, so it is a brace. Thank you for that clarification. A brace is the correct term. We apologize for that. So the question, Mike, is why type the problem number inside MathType object instead of directly onto Word documents? Do you have any comments on that?
You mean why use MathType versus typing in LaTeX?
No. So when we're numbering our problems, why are we typing in the problems in MathType, so number 1 in MathType, versus numbering it in our Word documents?
All right. The reason you would do that is if you want the problem numbers to come out in Nemeth code with the drop numbers and the punctuation indicator. That's kind of standard, and I know that some transcribers, some teachers don't really care to get the numbers actually put into Nemeth. They just use the literary numbers, and that's okay too. And that's when you would just type those into Word, and they would come out translated in literary Braille. All right. So, next question.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question here. One of the people asked if we could show an example of scientific notation of a compound. Are you familiar with that, Mike?
I don't recall.
The scientific notation of a compound, we actually are not, we're not math experts, to be honest with you, so we're not 100% sure on that, but I will save that question at the end, and we might be able to investigate that a little bit further. Same with the spatial chemical reaction. Here's a good question. Is MathType required in order to use LaTeX code within Microsoft Word?
Yes.
Yes, it is required. Great question. Thank you for that. Here is a good question. Can the translation be moved to a Braille note in BRF from MS Word?
Yes, I can demonstrate that too.
Okay, yeah, Michael is going to go ahead and demonstrate how that is possible because it is. So I'm going to go ahead and close this MathType window really quick that we had open. And I'm going to go ahead and give it over to him so he can demonstrate that.
Okay, so I'm going to show how to save this document as a BRF file, which you can look at with a Braille note. Obviously, though, the graphics are going to be ignored, and you won't be able to get access to those on your Braille note. Okay, so I'm in the original document right now, and I'm just going to go ahead and translate that again by going to Tiger and Translate Document. Actually, I'm going to first go to Formatter Settings and turn off the interline, because we're not going to want the interline in our Braille note. That might give us extraneous information. So Formatter Settings. Okay. I'm going to go back down to Braille and Ink Settings, that button, and hit space to activate it. I'm going to tab down to interline and uncheck that. And I'm just going to go down and hit Enter. Or hit OK. I'm going to hit OK again on this Formatter Settings. Okay. And then I'm going to Alt-Tab back to my document and go to the Tiger menu and arrow down to Translate Document and hit Enter. Alright, again, it dings when it's finished translating, which is good for blind users. I'm just going to make sure that I've got the last problem here. Okay. And all you have to do is go to the File menu and Save As, and then tab to File Type, and change that to Text Only. Here in Word, it's actually called Plain Text. So change the file type to Plain Text. And then I'm going to change the TXT extension on my file name to BRF. And hit Enter. It actually asks me if I want to convert this to text only. And I do, so I just hit Enter. and it's saved as a BRF file that can be opened on a Braille note. Okay, I'm going to give the microphone back to Stephen now.
All right, thank you for that demonstration on the transforming that to a BRF file, Mike. Here's a question. How do you deal with equations that utilize subscripts? So I think the best way to answer that would be back in that MathType window, which I'm going to go ahead and open up. We have the different visual equations here. And for example, if we wanted x with a subscript instead of a superscript, we can go back to the same tool where we got our superscript and instead choose the subscript. Again, that was that little tool here, the middle one on the top row. And once we're here, we can then type in our subscript. And that's how you would deal with that. Great question. So here's a question, Mike. If we don't use MathType to write out our equations, how do we get the Tiger to translate properly? And I guess when she says properly, she's meaning into Nemeth.
Basically, you have to use MathType. That's the only editor we support for math.
Okay, so Mike's answer there was, in case you weren't able to hear it, was that in order to use the Tiger software and have the Nemeth math, you actually do need to use MathType. We are not compatible with Scientific Notebook or the Windows equation editor. So great question. Thank you for that. And the next question, can you print to anything besides a tiger?
Here, I'll answer that. Technically, you cannot print the graphics on anything but a tiger. Like I showed for the Braille note question, you can save as a BRF file and then print to some other embosser with whatever program they use for copying files to their machine. But yeah, it is possible with saving as a BRF file.
The next question, can I use MathType to do X, Y coordinate planes and plotting lines?
Yeah, that would be part of the drawing tools.
Okay, so I think the answer is kind of yes, kind of no on that one. If you're asking if it can actually create a graph, it cannot, but you can use MathType like we did with our angle to label an angle or label whatever you might want to have on a graph, and then you can actually use the Microsoft drawing tools to draw the graph. Unfortunately, you would have to draw that yourself. The next question, do you have the list of MathType as a file or as print material?
List of MathType what?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on what you're asking here, so please, I believe your name is Salaha? Please go ahead and if you could give us a little more information, we'd be happy to answer that question for you. So Mike, we have a lady, she's saying that on number 4, the division of the problem was not correct and it should have been before the equal sign. How would you correct that? So how do you correct something if you discover an error in your MathType?
On number 4?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here, I'll do the mic.
All right.
Unfortunately, since we operate in Microsoft Word, it actually makes its own judgments of where to break lines. So it sees that probably x minus 3 and thinks that it should wrap the line after the minus sign. which is technically not correct. It's still readable and correct Nemeth and everything, but it's not, the preferred place to break the line. So what you would do is just go back up there and manually hit the backspace key and then position the cursor after the equal sign and just hit enter.
All right, I hope that answered your question, Cheryl. Thank you for that. The next question, with having actual Tiger embosser, can we use the softer or other embosser? So with having a Tiger embosser, can we use the software for another embosser? And so yes, you can by creating that BRF file, by saving it as a text file, converting that to the BRF, and then printing it off to any other hardware that supports that BRF file.
But again, you're not going to retain the graphics.
Oh yeah, good point. You will not be able to retain the graphics. All right, Mike, you got us called out here. The next question, on your system, I noticed that you have both Duxbury and the Tiger TSS installed. Are there times when you would use one over the other?
The reason I have Duxbury on my system is because all of our embossers need to be compatible with all of the different Braille translators. So in order to support these other programs, we actually go through testing with each model of embosser and that comes out. So you can actually use TSS for everything. It's just for testing purposes.
The next question, when I receive work from classroom teachers that use MathType but not use the equation to insert all the problems, is there an easy way to use the teacher's worksheet so it is all in Nemeth code?
I don't understand that. Can you say it again?
Yeah, so the question, when I receive work from classroom teachers that use MathType but do not use the equation the insert method on all the problems, is there an easy way to use the teacher's worksheet so it is all in Nemeth code? So is there an easy way to bring in a document that maybe MathType was used to create the worksheet within, but not necessarily used correctly? Or would you need to reinsert those?
Unfortunately, you would have to redo that document so that it would come out correctly in Braille.
Right. So yeah, you would actually, if the teacher did not create it correctly using the correct method that we showed you today, you would have to recreate that document. The only good thing about that is you can always save those documents for use at a later time, and it's still better than typing it all out on a Perkins. Okay, so I actually had this next question earlier today when we were preparing for the webinar, and the question is as follows. If we would like the degree sign in the proper location as a superscript in print, can we use the superscript icon and the circle, or will it not translate correctly? And the answer that I learned for that one today is that actually if you put that in a superscript, the way MathType reads that degree sign, or that little circle, is automatically as a superscript. So if we put it in as a superscript, in Nemeth it'll come in as a superscript, a double superscript. So we actually we'll just have to visually know that it's a degree sign and is not as a superscript. But that is a great question. Thank you very much for that one. The next question, can you do an example with problems 1, 2, and 3 in the same row or line?
No, actually. I thought I was clear about that, but we enter each problem in as a separate MathType object. Otherwise, the Braille translator will run them all together, and MathType actually will see it probably as a matrix if there's more than one line. And if you're just doing a list of addition problems, you don't want that, translated as a matrix with the Nemeth brackets all around it. So no, that's not correct to do it that way.
Okay, so we are getting to the point where we're out of time, so if you haven't asked a question, please feel free to not ask any more questions, and if you should have more questions, go ahead and email us after the webinar is complete, and we'll still go ahead and work through those for you, but I want to make sure I answer the last couple that were asked here. The first one, how is MathType accessed? MathType is accessed across your toolbar. For example, you have the File, Edit, View, Insert format, and then there's one called MathType. If you don't have that, it's very likely that you do not have the MathType software installed. MathType is available from ViewPlus, and it's also available from Design Science. And if you did know for a fact that you did purchase it and installed, Microsoft Word has a thing called Disabled Items, which you can access from the Help menu by going to Help, About, and then accessing the disabled items. And you should be able to control those there. If you're having more issues, feel free to email us, and we'll definitely help you out with that. The next question, can you scan a math document and import it and then put it in MathType? Again, the answer to that one is that you can't actually just scan in a document and import it into MathType. You would actually need to recreate that with MathType, one equation at a time. The question is how soon before the video comes out. You know, we should actually have this video ready for your guys' download tomorrow. It'll take the evening to process, and then it'll be available for download tomorrow, and I'll make sure that's sent out to all of you. The next question, will JAWS read MathType? The answer to that is no. Unfortunately, all of the different math symbols are only visual representations, but Mike would like to add a little more on that note.
However, if you have MathType installed, like I demonstrated with translating with the Alt / character to get the MathType object from the LaTeX, it's actually a toggle. So if you have MathType objects in your Word document, you can just put the cursor on the same line, and when you hit Alt /, it will translate those backwards into LaTeX code. So if you're a blind user and you have learned the LaTeX code, you can actually read that with your screen reader or your Braille display. So Alt /, which is a toggle.
All right, guys. We would like to thank everyone for attending our webinar today. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and there are some more questions that came in. So please go ahead and those questions, feel free to submit those to training@viewplus.com, and we'll definitely get those taken care of for you. Lastly, I'd like to mention that if you guys are not already a fan of us on Facebook or following us on Twitter or our company blog, feel free to do so, and you'll be able to learn all about our upcoming webinars that will be for free, just like this one was, that we'll be having in the future. So our Facebook is www.facebook.com/ViewPlus. Our Twitter, www.twitter.com/ViewPlus. And our blog is blog.viewplus.com. All right, we'd like to thank you all once more. We really enjoyed your guys' time today, and we look forward to having Mike Seville for another webinar that we will be having here in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, this is Mike, and I'd just like to thank everybody as well for attending this webinar, and I hope that this information was useful to some of you. So with that, thanks for attending, and goodbye.